former colleague of yours, Kishore Chokar, said, and he said, ICICI's Herculean rise has much to do with Kamath's reading of how markets would evolve. And this pretty much, I think, really signifies the rise of ICICI Bank and the success that you have seen. What is it that helps you spot the opportunities that other people are unable to spot?
I think it's something very simple. I think it's observation. And let me use an example. I think what I saw particularly first in Philippines, where I lived for 4 years, and then in Indonesia, and going around Asia, so that at around $500 to $1,000 per capita income, certain things started happening. And if you just put that map in your mind, malls start happening. There are malls all around you. Roads start improving. And you have, of course, people aspiring for a car. People want things to put in their homes, and so on. So I said, if we are going to hit from $500 to $1,000, that ought to happen in India. So that's where I took the bet, early bet, and we called it for a defining phrase to put punch into it, a universal bank. I would say banking beyond what it was then, a wide range of things, wide range of products, and so on, a full suite of products. And I think that I would say came entirely from observation. Other connect was on technology. We had technology, but we are not very good users of technology. Technology is a great facilitator, but you have to know how to harness it. You had that machine in front of you, but you were content to use it. And I use this phrase many times in those early days. We are using the computer like a calculator or like a typing machine. We are not gone beyond to harness the power of the machine.
One of the other things that you've often spoken about, and which is really again the philosophy behind ICICI's success, is world-class services at Indian prices. We know that you've used technology to actually drop down costs, to bring down prices. But what were the other contours or the other ingredients that have enabled you to actually go out there and do this world-class services at Indian prices?
I think there are 2 or 3 things here. Indeed, picking the right technology, which allows you to do this. For example, if I used a mainframe, there's no way that I could have provided it at a fraction of the cost. It would have been world class, but it would not have been 10% of the cost. Today, it's 10% of the cost. We call it the 10% solution which is required to make things work in India, because our ticket size is small. We cannot afford to actually have a transaction cost higher. I think the other ingredients are people. I think you need to have the right people to do this with the right mindset and the right age group. And the other thing is a big lesson. Flip side, you also have to assess, is your customer ready for it? And initially there was skepticism whether the customer indeed was ready for technology. And the people actually were betting with me from within the organization. I'm talking of 99, 2000 now. That nobody will use an ATM. This was, and there were less than 100 ATMs in the country, and we said we'll roll out 1,000 ATMs. The tough part was to assess whether the customer would get it, would take to it. And there was no way to assess it. Again, you had anecdotal evidence looking at things outside, and the challenge that came to me most of the time was the Indian customer is illiterate. I said, I will not accept it. I think the customer is looking for convenience, and the customer will learn enough to operate any machine, and that's what happened. So you can have, I would say, less educated customers. I won't use the word illiterate, but these are smart customers. They pick up things very quickly, and I think that has been a lesson to me throughout.
I wanted to talk to you about that because, once again, you've proven people wrong as far as banking on the unbanked is concerned. Now, I believe, again, your model there has been different because you haven't been going after deposits, you've actually been going after lending. If you can share with us your insights on that, because, in India, the notion is the unbanked will never actually be converted into the bankable.
See, the challenge is very simple. If we're talking of the unbanked, they do not have money to save, to start with. So you need to make sure that they earn so that they can put away some money and that becomes their saving. I think that's where you have to start the lending process and get that into a virtuous movement where they start earning and it's sustainable. And then they keep money, putting money away, whether it's into banks or insurance companies or funds. I think that's what will start the process of saving. So it is from that.
But what's been the big insight really of having dealt with the unbanked, of having dealt with rural India in that sense?
See, by and large, the feedback that comes out very clearly is it is access to finance which is the problem. It is, always a confusion whether finance is affordable. Finance is affordable because the person did not have finance at all. But it is the access to finance which is the big challenge, and you have to make that access work.
The fear of NPAs, the fear of people not being able to pay back, and then you talk about the government saying priority sector lending and so on and so on.
If somebody were to lend you 50 rupees in the morning and collect 60 rupees in the evening, do you think it is fair?
No.
No. Now I'll add one more sentence to it. If you made during the day 250 rupees and gave back 60 rupees, is it fair?
Perhaps.
So if you leverage 50 rupees in the morning and you earned 260 during the course of the day, repaid 60 and kept 200, is that fair? Now, in this situation, the person who is making the 200, you deny him this 50 because we started the assumption that 10 is unfair. What happens? So that's where I call, you're denying credit to somebody because we believe that it is not affordable to the person. But for somebody who doesn't have access at all, and if access is available, we then need to evaluate what is he going to make with that money.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to open this up for the audience here.
Mr. Kamath, you have seen in last decade banking model emerging from card side and internet banking, mobile banking. Next 10 years, what do you think, which are the disruptive or innovative models that are likely to emerge?
And you're a believer in disruptive technology.
Yeah, I think that to me, at least the next few years, 10 years today is a little bit too long because in 10 years probably we'll have things we are not imagined today. In the immediate future, I think the cell phone is going to be a much broader device than what we are thinking of today, and that device probably will become a disruptor. Now the question is who owns what part of that device is going to be the play.
ICICI has had a very aggressive growth path with the belief that the quality will fix itself, and that has obviously worked for ICICI. Now, all of us at various points face this challenge that, okay, the quality is fine and things are good, customers are liking it, but there's always scope for improvement. So do we, any words on that?
See, I think there's a time and place for, each type of strategy. The aggression was required when we were a very nascent market and, we saw that there is territory out there to be gained. So you had to adopt a particular strategy to gain that territory. And if you made a trade-off that, yes, in terms of quality, there is a trade-off that at this stage I could make and it'll still work, then you do that. But if at that point of time the assessment was that the trade-off is not going to be possible, you won't do it. And I've had countless incidents during that time wherein people have come and said, look, technology is not robust, do we still go ahead? But making a careful assessment of the situation, we said, we go ahead. And then retrofit and manage things.
How possible is it to retrofit in the current situation where competition is
I call it fixing it on the fly. So you will have to fix it on the fly. I think today when when competition is ferocious, you're looking at it differently. Probably growth also becomes a little more even and so on. We're talking of those days when even if it's on a small base, you were growing at probably 3-digit pace. So you needed a different fix. So I think one has to put things in context, and the same solution probably would not be appropriate today.
Go ahead.
Hi. What, according to you, should be the right thing at this point that corporates should adopt as far as social responsibility is concerned, and what is ICICI doing in that context?
Thank you for that question. I think, frankly, we have been trying to do things much before the phrase CSR became fashionable, because I've had this colleague of mine, Dr. Nachiket Moore, who I would say came back to India from Wharton after his PhD just so that he was in the midst of doing CSR. So he has been doing this since well before it became fashionable. And what we have tried to do is stick to 2 or 3 basic drivers, and probably that will answer as to what I believe is required. One has been, how do you, that first point that you made in terms of inclusiveness, how do you, get people to become sustainable or self-sustainable in terms of, so what are those interventions that can be done in a micro context which will make people sustain themselves, which is then lead on to microfinance and on. So basically what should be the approaches, pilots and so on. So we've been doing this for a very long time and a lot of learnings from it, which are now capable of being scaled up. There was one. The second one was in terms of health. And within health we had picked up a very simple issue. How do you address infant mortality? And we said the conclusion which we came very early is not through looking after the infant but looking after the mother during the stages of pregnancy, making sure that nutrition, certain parts of nutrition available even in villages to the poor, just to teach that this is what is to be done and bring it in. So 2 or 3 areas. To me today, and we have created a foundation for this, for which we today provide a substantial amount as grant out of our profits. But today, I think, seeing the opportunity and the challenges, I think the biggest thing that we could do as in a CSR context, I'm not saying that others are not important, everyone does is important, is probably getting the skill sets right for the new India. And as I said, I talked about anything between 10 to 15 million jobs is what is being talked of. Let me take a midpoint and say 12.5 million jobs. We're not getting the skills right. Can we think holistically in the context of getting the skills right for the jobs that are actually coming on the horizon that is there? And how is it that we can collectively do it rather than individually?
But how do you do that? Because again, it comes back to industry bodies like CII who get all of you together.
Exactly.
But how do you actually make this not an individual exercise but a concerted effort? Because that's the need of the hour.
I think we have to provide that platform. There's no platform. And I think that slowly has started happening. And how do you do that? You create awareness, you talk about it. And I'm sure these are all very smart companies. They'll come together and then work to common solutions. Where are we on this? We are at not even at basement stage. So we have got a lot of work to do on this. And I'm sure things will be done because people will see the merit of doing this.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on our first episode of our Young Turks tutorial with KV Kamath. But tune in again next week because we'll be back with a lot more. Till then, from all of us here on the Young Turks team, goodbye and thanks very much for watching.
That is, F1 teaches you something very, and the same thing with MotoGP. They both teach you this, that that you have to drive at the limit, but not over the limit. I think that's the message that keeps coming back to you. The point is that I think business cannot divorce itself from the political realities. Today is the best time to have been born because this sort of transformation happens once in the history of a nation, and we are right in the midst of it.